Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Joe Emilio Show. I'm your host, Joe Emilio, and tonight there's a co-host with me, Dumo Denga, and later on, ManPatria are going to join me, and we're going to have a panel night, and we're going to talk about, is black privilege real, or does it exist? We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about EFF. We're going to talk about the government and what they've been up to lately. It's very sad news, ladies and gentlemen, coming your way. But buckle in and stay tuned because there's a lot more coming. Stay tuned. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see with me right now is my co-host, Dumo Denga. How are you doing, Dumo?
I'm good, and you, Joe? I think I'm just excited, and always looking to having a good discussion. And first time co-hosting on another show, so that's also awesome for me.
Awesome. Well, it's the first time I'm having a co-host. I don't think there's like any. You're basically a guest for like 2 hours. Like that's, but in a good way.
Exactly.
You can say whatever you want. You can tell me, hey, there's a comment there. I want to see it. That whatever. We'll just have fun with the audience, and we'll banter. We'll feed off each other, and I'm sure that first hour is gonna go by very quickly. But anyway, very quickly, let me just also tell people, guys, if you're tuning in, go check out Dumo on Twitter, on everything. They have a website, ManPatria. Go check that out, and go give him a subscribe on his channel. He talks about, well, I'll let him in a moment tell you what he talks about. But yeah, we're gonna obviously talk a bit about some headlines, the recent headlines that have been giving Twitter a bit of a scare and getting people talking. And then later on, we'll have ManPatria, which is the rest of the crew, of Dumo's crew, which is Nzuzu and Koketsu, are going to be joining us. And we're going to be talking about, is black privilege real, or does it exist? And we won't spoil anything right now by talking about it. But do tune in at 8 p.m. when the rest of the guys join us. And so very quickly, Dumo, let our viewers know what it is you do on ManPatria.
Well, we just talk a lot of nonsense. Now I'm playing. We basically have a weekly show that's on Mondays at 7:00, and we just talk about what happened last week and other themes as well. And that's just basically what we do. We just offer our thoughts on what's going on in the country.
Fantastic. I'm gonna put up your website just now. Is it ManPatria? ManPatria.co.za or .com?
.com.
Ooh, look at you, all fancy. So there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse my head and Dumo's, but there it is. Yeah, so there's the website. I do believe it's linked in the description, but you can find it on any of the social medias if you go. I mean, Dumo, you like on everything: Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Is that Spotify? This one, or is that
Spotify? Yes.
Yeah, and then Apple, iTunes, Telegram.
Telegram, we're on Telegram as well.
And Patreon and TikTok. So
yes,
very easy to find, should be. All right, cool. So guys, go check them out. All right, now that that's all done, let's there's a question I want to ask you that doesn't have anything to do with the headlines that we're going to talk about tonight. So just remind me. It's actually got Zach. This guy's in Florida, and he watches me a lot recently. I think he stumbled on my stuff, and he really enjoys. Zach, by the way, thank you for tuning in. So he asked me a question earlier. Just remind me to ask you after the headlines. Just say Zach had a question, and I'll remember.
Okay, cool.
All right. All right, so first headline that we're going to look at is, guys, I know some of us were hopeful. Dumo, I think you probably knew what the outcome was going to be. But I was a little bit hopeful. I mean, I wasn't surprised by what happened, but I was a little bit hopeful. And obviously getting the news today that government has decided to extend the state of disaster. When this happened, Dumo, what was your first thoughts?
Well, I was like, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I think they've been always trying to find a reason to extend this, and I think the latest reason now they were a bit more honest in the fact that they were saying that they wanted to um, change up the legislation so that they can have um, what is it measurements in place so that they can handle things like this in the future. But I'm like, there's no need because if this thing comes up again, they can always institute the state of disaster. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? If it really gets bad, they can always do it. There's no need. So I think, in my opinion, this is just guy. They don't want to let go of this power. They really enjoyed this thing of where they could just dictate on where the country should go
Mm.
at a moment's notice. Like as they say, they want to rule by decree. And I think that now the other authorities, the courts, they need to, well, if they send this if this gets challenged in courts, and I think it is going to be challenged in courts by DSA and AfriForum, but AfriForum has already submitted something.
Yeah.
So yeah, they must take these guys to court because you can't a functioning democracy can't function where a state can just rule by decree
Yeah.
whenever they want. And I don't think it's appropriate for the cabinet to have such powers. Because
Absolutely.
remember, these guys, they bypass parliament, they bypass all other structures, and and no one challenges them. And I don't think that's correct. And also the damage that this lockdown has caused is I mean, I mean, look, we can see it. It's clear as day,
Yeah.
So I just don't think it's the right way to go forward. And I think the reality is that if we want to get our freedoms back, we're going to have to fight the government on this. And the best way to do it is through the justice system.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, when I did a video on this, I had a few people in the comment section tell me, like, oh, but the reason why they're extending it is because they don't want to pay back the 500 billion. Do you know about that? Like, I didn't know. Who are they going to pay it back to? Like, the
I
ANC
think
borrowed it, or is it from the IMF?
I think it's from the IMF. Yeah, I think it's from the IMF because the IMF gave them a massive loan.
Yeah.
I remember, I remember this because I saw a meme about it where it showed a notification, like a bank notification
Oh,
saying
yeah, I saw that one.
what 500 million was in your bank account, and then everyone starts dancing, ANC members. So that's how I remembered it was from the IMF. Yeah. So, oh yeah, and one more thing, Joe. I forgot to mention. Remember the last extension they made prior to this one, right? Remember they said it was going to be for the last time.
Yeah.
Forgot to mention that, and now they're doing it again.
Yeah.
So clearly, someone needs to hold them to account.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, that's why I think you and I weren't that surprised when it was like, oh, it's being extended for another, like, month, because it's like, Cyril also said, no one's going to get the mandatory jab. And then look what happened a few months later. There might not be any legislation, but they're definitely talking about it. Companies are being forced to kind of, forced to, make their employees get it. That's a form of mandatory jab. I mean, so many. When was it that he said lockdown would be a thing of the past? I think it was in 2015 or 2016. I can't remember. And we're still experiencing load shedding, and they're talking about stage 10 now. So I don't think it's gonna get any better. But yeah, my point is ANC, Cyril, the whole lot of them politicians. They lie. This is what they do. This is why I'm not surprised that it was extended. But yeah, in terms of the 500 billion that they have to pay back, I mean, they're gonna pay it back sooner or later. I don't think that's the sole reason why they're extending it. I just think it's mainly about power. Like Dumo said, they love the power. They love having this free reign on everything, and they can. I mean, they don't have to necessarily put things through parliament because like they banned open-toed shoes and chicken. I'm starting to think they really did that just to see, like, just for fun, almost like they were drunk at one night. There was like a party, right? And they were drunk, and they're like, let's just see if we can ban chicken, just for the fun of it. Let's see what happens. Like, I just feel like it was one of those kind of situations. And they did it, and they got away with it. I mean, like obviously they took it down, or they took back the ban, but I mean they did it. They banned
Right.
cigarettes, right? They banned so many things. Um, Let me just quickly also get to some of the comments here that are coming in. Zach asking, "What if the justice system is corrupt?" Dumo, do you want to answer that one?
I don't think the justice system is corrupt as people make it out to be. I have spoken to Martin van Staden about this. So Martin van Staden's view is a bit optimistic, but he believes that the way judges are selected, and also the JSC as well, political interference is not the greatest thing for the justice system.
Yeah,
But I think that they are good judges, right? Um, we're going to talk about another topic where a judge made a ruling that I liked.
yeah,
So I don't want to jump into it too soon,
yeah, yeah.
but they have been rulings that judges have made. Remember with Arto? Arto actually made they wanted to change no, sorry, the department, well, Balula's department wanted to change the Arto Act, where it would allow that people's licenses could be suspended and stuff like that. And a judge ruled that it's unconstitutional. Sorry, like you can't do that. You know what I mean? So I do have faith in our justice system. And also, the nice thing about our justice, I mean, I'm going to say our justice system, but even the United States as well. I mean, if a low court, if a court makes a ruling, you can always go to a higher court until you reach the highest court in the land. So that's the nice thing about the justice system. It's not always over. So even if you have a corrupt judge at a particular court, you can always go to a higher one, and that judge will probably look at it and say, "No, this is the wrong ruling." So I'll give you a few examples. Remember, okay, not AfriForum. There was that case in Kalini. Remember that case where there was if I'm not mistaken, there was a person who was alleged to have stolen something at a farm, and the farmers took this
Yes,
individual
I remember that.
and put him in a bakkie. And then while the bakkie was driving like at 120 k's an hour, he jumped out and he died instantly. Well, okay, I'm not say instantly, but he died as a result of that, right? And I don't know if it's the magistrates court or the high court. Not no, no. I think it was the high court at that particular place. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but the court that initially saw it ruled that um, the the farmers were guilty of murder by means of dolus eventualis, which just means that they could have reasonably possibly foreseen that their actions would have led to the death of someone, right? But when you look at it, that's crazy. You're driving in a car, you're taking someone to the police station. What makes you think that you would have seen that this guy would have tried to jump out of a car that's moving at 120 kilometers an hour? And guess what? The Supreme Court heard this and they ruled against it. So the guys at Kilini were actually cleared of this. So I have faith in our justice system. Yes, there are some judges that I think like, bro, how do these guys even become a judge? But then there's some judges where it's like brilliant, brilliant work. So
Yeah,
I have faith in it.
yeah. I think there's an interesting dynamic in the court system. I think there is a bit of it that's corrupt, because it's definitely some weird, shady stuff that happens. But at the same time, there are the good, almost like there's like a faction within the justice system, if we could put it that way, like two factions: the ones that have been influenced by politics, and the ones that haven't. And the ones that haven't are usually the ones that make the good judgments. Hopefully, it doesn't get any worse. Julie, watching on Facebook, saying, hi, my two favorite people." Oh, thank you so much, Julie. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Yeah, so if you're watching anywhere, by the way, Duma, this is streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. So
Lovely, lovely.
we're everywhere.
Everywhere.
I'm gonna eventually get it on TikTok. I'm figuring that out though. I think I know
Okay.
how, but I'll probably only experiment with that next month. Anyway, so let's move on to So unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, it's another month of state of disaster. What this means, I mean, I haven't seen how if this changes anything in the regulations. As far as I understand, or as far as what I can see so far, the regulations stay as is. Like there's no lifting of anything, or I don't know. Everything seems to be the same. Like the amount of people at a gathering, so on and so forth. I don't know. Have you seen anything?
No, I didn't see any significant changes. I mean, on paper, there might be changes. So I'm just saying this just for the sake of not being clipped, and then someone says, "Hey, Dumo, you said this," and then end up being wrong. So I'm gonna say on paper there might have been changes. I haven't looked at it. Um, However, effectively, it doesn't seem to have changed anything, right?
Yeah.
Um, People have been telling me that they go to many places and they're not wearing masks. And I even do that as well. Oh, now I'm incriminating myself, I guess. But
They
the reality is
they
that,
need proof
yeah.
first.
Oh, yeah, they need proof. They need proof. But they'll say this is a confession. They say this counts as a confession. They might say, but Dumo, you said on the Joe Emilio show
Yeah, but you
at
can.
what 16 minutes past 7 South African Standard Time on the 15th of March 2022 that you went outside without a mask. I mean, many people have. Like, I mean, even got to the point where I was even at a shop, right? And I saw this person without a mask. And then they looked at me weird. And I just looked at them as if to say, nah, man, whatever. I don't care if you're not wearing a mask. Relax yourself. Like, and even okay, let me not tell you who told me this because I don't want to put this guy in trouble. But he even told me that where he lives, no one's wearing a mask. No one cares. Like even in some shops, like they'll say you need to wear a mask, but then they don't really enforce it. They just go, so just cover your mouth for now. It's like that. And there was another incident. This guy on Twitter, I think his name is Jonathan Wright. I might be wrong. He said he was driving from George to Cape Town. And that's quite a distance, right? And
Yeah.
he said he lost his mask in George and he really needed to use the bathroom really badly, right? On the way. So he went to an engine and one person said, "Hey, you need to wear a mask." And then another employee's like, "Man, just let him through, man."
Oh,
Like,
nice.
I think it's reached that point. People
Yeah.
are just tired. They're just tired.
But that's the thing. Like, even if they implement this into like the Health Act and stuff, I was discussing this with DRSA as well. Like, no one's gonna listen. No one's listening now. I mean, there are places that I go to. I once forgot to put on a mask. I'm being serious. I was walking with my wife in one of the Checkers where we stay. But it's like a big Checkers center. It's like a Checkers hyper,
Okay.
and there's like other shops around it. And we're walking in, and then before I get to the Checkers, I realize like, oh crap, I'm not wearing a mask, and no one had told me anything. No, there is security guards, everything. Like no one was even looking at me funny. Like I just realized like, oh crap, like my wife's wearing a mask. But I'm not. And then I'm like, oh crap, babe. Like I just realized I'm not wearing a mask and no one said anything. And then she's like, yeah, well, nobody cares. You're right, nobody cares. The only like, obviously, when I got to the Checkers entrance, like I could see the security guard was like looking at me like he was going to tell me, but then he saw me put on the mask before I walked in. But yeah, like I think this whole look, I said this again. I said this before. I'll say it again. ANC have a doctor. I forgot the guy's name. It's not Kareem. It's not him. It's another doctor that they go to for consulting, if I can put it that way. Like they ask him like, oh, what's, the dangers of COVID? And he'll say like, well, it's my professional opinion that maybe we should stay under lockdown, or these are the conditions, or blah, blah, blah. He advises them basically. And he, about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, came out to say masks don't work. This is the same doctor that the ANC relies on, looks to for advice, for medical advice and stuff like that. One of them is one of the doctors. Came out and said masks don't work. Masks should be forgotten about. And yet, there's still regulations to wear the damn thing. So yeah, there you go. It is about power.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is about power. It's nothing
That's-
it's nothing but power. So yeah, no, it is interesting. I'll try and find the clip. It was actually on a CRA, one of their.
Oh, okay.
They actually interviewed the same doctor, and he said it on the show. So I'll try and find it, and I'll share it, and I'll clip it, and I'll send it to you. Cool. So let's look at the next headline. the next headline. Once again, EFF.
I'm rubbing my hands, guys. I'm rubbing my hands.
So it's fun
I
to
don't know if
talk
you know
about the
that
EFF.
Patrick meme.
Yeah, yeah. um, so EFF in Lucy says advertising industry must be fined 50 billion for racism. 50 billion rand. I, I think they just thumb suck these numbers. Like I don't think there's any like real mathematics that goes into this. He's just like 50 billion. Let's just they were racist, so let's find them 50 billion. Um, apparently this is got to do like apparently they've done like a study or I don't know what, and they found out that the advertising industry in South Africa is racist because not enough black people or something like that.
Right,
um
right.
and yeah, see, like he said that the top 6 advertising agencies in the country are foreign and white owned, and they bill about 95% of all media ad spend. So see, there's the is what he thinks is inequality. Um, I'm trying to see because I don't think I don't think the ad industry is even worth 50 billion rand. Like
That's actually a good observation, right? I know I haven't seen it like that. Yeah, is it worth 50? Oh my goodness, is it actually worth 50 billion?
I was
You
hoping,
know, Joe,
well,
it actually could be, eh? It actually could be. Um,
well, I wonder if we can Google. What would you say?
yeah, let's see that.
How would you say this? Ad industry in South Africa worth. I guess.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's it. Let's see that.
Huh? 30, 30.4 billion.
You nailed it. You are a champ. That's you like honestly that's like well done. That is proper. Like I think that like we might as well just move on to the next one. Like to the next segment. Like that, you just nailed it. That was nailed. Like honestly, like I never thought of it that way. I thought because now what did they say? 30 billion.
Yeah.
Or did they say rands or USD?
No. Okay. So
Let's just check.
It's 2.5 billion US dollars.
Okay. So it's 30. Okay. So it's actually 30.4 billion rands. Okay, cool. Yeah, Joe. Let's move on to the next one. No,
Point made. Enough said.
No, that's
Yeah.
actually a very good observation.
No, but like honestly,
um,
what do you think of this headline though? Like before I said that, like
all right.
where were you standing? Where were you sitting? What were you like?
Wow.
What was your mindset?
So with me, I was gonna really rip on his philosophical underpinnings, like his assumptions that he makes when he makes these what do you call it? When he makes these grand statements, right,
Yeah.
about how much the industry should be um, fined. And I gotta say, first of all, Joe, I know I said it before, but I really think that you're right when you say that. Well, I would say you're wrong. It's not that little mathematics didn't go into it. No mathematics went into it. Thumb sucking requires no mathematics. And this reminds me of what Julius Malema said when Mark Oppenheimer, well, let me just say advocate. I know him personally, but I'll just say advocate Oppenheimer just for, you know, because that's his title, right? So what advocate Oppenheimer um, said to him, or not said to him, but what he questioned him, and then about compensation, and then Malema's like, I think he wanted like 3 trillion or
Yeah, he
something like
wanted
that,
3 trillion.
and I was like,
Yeah.
it's like 3 trillion. Like,
Is,
what is our GDP? I think that's our GDP. Let's just check that out. Wait. You want to Google that?
okay. I'll Google it. Hold on.
Let's see that.
What would I type?
I
Like
want to see that.
GDP, South African
Just say,
GDP, South Africa
yeah, it's a GDP. Yeah, let's just see that. Oh my
GDP.
word. I'm really itching to see this. I really want to see
It's
this.
less. It's oh crap. Sorry. It's 301 billion. Well, USD. So wait, it might actually be. Okay, so that's
So
USD
you
though.
multiply that by what, 15, right?
15. Yeah. So I'll do it now on the calculator because
More than 3 trillion. I
is it
think
more
so.
than
I
3
think.
trillion?
Hold
301
on, I'm
times
wrong.
15. It's okay, it's 4 trillion. 4.5 trillion.
It's 4 trillion. So he's asking for something that's about, let's say, 3 divided by 4.5, something that's close to 2/3 of the South African GDP. Like we have to shut down a million industries just to get that. It's crazy. You know what I mean? But that's the first point. So the mathematics, that should be the only point. But I'll tell you what I was thinking, right?
Okay.
Um, the second, what I was thinking was that when I read the article, he was busy saying things like, as you mentioned earlier, that the black businesses, they only have so much, even though they get so little, even though they represent so much. Or they'll say, if you look at Metro FM, they only get so much in ad revenue, even though they have 800,000 listeners across the country, or they have more listeners across the country than Prime Media and everything like that. And I'm like, bro, like we saying, like, I don't know what's bad. I don't know if because he was wearing a hat yesterday, so when he was making these claims, so we never got to see his hairstyle. But I know he doesn't comb it, so I don't know what is bad, his hair or the argument. And I think the reason why he wore that hat, because I think if someone was questioning him, they would have said, like, really, I don't know what is worse, your hair or your argument. But anyway, I think personally, right, that his philosophical assumptions are flawed. Number one, he believes that if if a certain race, if a particular country has a specific racial demographic structure, right? He thinks that each and every situation or each and every social interaction should represent that structure. So, for example, if you have 80% black people in a country, then therefore 80% of the business owners in South Africa should be white, black, or whatever the country represents. Or if you look at all the companies in South Africa, 80% of the CEOs must be black, or whatever. They think across those lines. But and now he thinks that, well, if I have more listeners, then therefore I should be making more money than you. No, um, it could be that he doesn't even know the nature of the agreements that these advertising companies have with these radio stations. So, for example, it could be that if you look at, let's say, he mentioned Kaya FM, maybe the reason why Kaya FM gets paid less than, let's say, Prime Media is because of the fact that maybe they are more cost effective in managing their business. So they don't need to charge people as much, or maybe they want to attract small businesses to advertise on their platforms. Maybe that's the reason why. Or and that could be an advantage for black businesses. But he thinks that now, because they're black and they're the majority and everything like that, then everyone must get then black businesses must get more. It's madness. This is just nothing more than a vision that he thought about, or that Malema told him about, probably, because he didn't look very confident in his presentation. Well, in some segments of it, but the reality, it's flawed, because, like, maybe that's what KFM wants. They want to be seen as, okay, look, we don't offer crazy rates. That's why we do what we do. And maybe Prime Media, maybe the audience that they have um is far wider. So it could be that, let's say, with Prime Media, they may have different platforms where they advertise on. So, for example, it's not only on radio. They might have an app, for example, and people may listen to the radio on the app, and there might be special advertising slots on the app, not only on the audio clips and everything like that.
Yeah.
So there's the channel. Okay. So sorry. Now I'm speaking.
No, go
now
ahead. Go
I'm,
ahead.
now I'm using specific jargon, but what I'm saying is that maybe the reason why Prime Media earns more is because they have more advertising slots, not only on radio, but also on maybe their website or their app, or whatever platform. And remember, Prime Media is huge. I mean, I went on their website the
Yeah,
other
they're
day,
big.
right? And they do everything. They do billboards. I mean, even in shops, they have like. I was so shocked to see what they actually sell. So it could be that the reason why Prime Media just makes more money is because they have more products, and a lot of the advertisers find those products valuable. And it could be that Kaya FM and all the other small radio stations do not have those type of products to sell to advertisers, and that could be the simple reason, but not according to Mbuyisen in Ndlozi. No, 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 no. It is racism. It is just has to be racism, and this is the problem. Like you know what I'm trying to say. You can see this guy hasn't worked a single day in a company in his life. He hasn't worked one single day. He earns more than me, by the way. I mean, I've
Well,
been
yeah.
working in,
He
he earns way more than me. All he had to do was not comb his hair and write a PhD about racism, and then he gets into parliament, and my word, like, what am I doing here, Joe? Clearly he knows how to make more money than me, but yet he doesn't even know how the industries work. It's crazy.
absolutely, man. Like, it's but don't all politicians do this though? Like most of them, they don't. They're so out of touch with the real South Africa. They don't understand
Right.
at all how it works. And EFF is like the biggest political party that is so out of touch. Second to ANC. I don't believe at all the ANC knows what the real South Africa looks like, and that goes for
Yeah.
most of the politicians out there. I do want to bring up Nolu's watching. Hello, Nolu. I do want to have you on my show still. I know I must get back to you on that. Sorry, I'm taking so long to get back to you. But she says, but guys, to be fair, he meant it looking at the amount of the amount the industry made throughout the years, because apparently all these years, all these years, the industry has been racist.
I sense sarcasm. I don't
Yeah,
know
yeah,
about
yeah.
you. I sense sarcasm
No, absolutely. It's
there.
yeah,
And Nolu, you know what? Nolu is more qualified to answer that question more than me, because I think she works in that type of industry, so she knows like the type of channels that these guys sell their advertisements on. And I'm pretty sure if we had to do just an analysis on what they sell, how much they charge, and the demand and whatever, you'll see Prime Media, they've done their research. And I'm not saying Kai FM haven't. Maybe they don't have the capital. Maybe they just are not interested because their listener base does not use these platforms that maybe Prime Media is interested in advertising on.
yeah,
So maybe that's the case. But I mean, there's so many reasons. I think that's the point I'm trying to make, is that there's so many reasons as to why we see so many disparities, right?
yeah,
In in this. And a perfect example. Now, another one, it's not advertising, but it's basketball, guys. Now, according to Buisen and Ndlozi's logic, right, it seems like that the NBA is racist towards whites, or racist to everyone who is not white. Because if you look at the players in the NBA, they make up over, I think, half. I mean, black people make up over half of the players within the NBA, and they're the highest paid, yet they only make up 8% of the population. No, I'm lying. 12% of the population in the United States. And where is he saying that? I mean, like, where is he on that? You know what I mean? And the reality is that if you go everywhere around the world, you will see these disparities. Like if you go to Malaysia, Chinese Malaysians are the highest earners, right? And again, if you go to America, I think the highest earners are Asians. It's not white. So where's Busen and Ndlozi saying, hey, it must be white people who are the highest earners and everything like that? So the reality is that, like, and that's another flaw in his thinking, is that
yeah,
around the world, there's probably no such example of what he is looking for. And also at the same time, if you had to reach that point, you're going to have to commit a lot of atrocities.
yeah.
And in this case, he says, well, in his case, the remedy is to actually, find these guys 50 billion, even though the industry is only worth about 30 billion. That's going to be an atrocity.
It's gonna
But
kill the industry.
really, like, exactly, might as well just like nationalize it. Not to say that it should be nationalized, guys, but
Don't give them
yeah,
ideas.
yeah.
Oh man. Well, Hertz saying Germany politicians are not out of touch. They have no clue how to start or run a business. This is also true. I don't disagree with that at all. So, all right. Well, very quickly, let's get through the last portion of headlines here, which there's a point to where I'm going with this, right? So I showed this headline on my show last night. Tresemme shampoo advert not discriminatory, sorry, says Equality Court. All right. Now, what you guys need to also keep in mind or take note of is what it says underneath. I can't watch or read the whole thing because I don't support mainstream garbage. But judge rules the original version of the Tresemme advert on Click's website didn't discriminate against black women, and that an edited version posted on social media by an unknown person was the cause of the outrage and the protests. Now, Dumo, I'm going to get to you in just a moment, but there's another point I want to make with this because this was released today. Like we can see here 5 hours ago. Only one ad agency signed up for an anti-discrimination training after Tresemme furore, says regulator. So this makes me question a few things, right? Because we had this whole uproar about this, and like I was saying it last night, like there was all during the clicks and Tresemme thing, there's all this talk about fake news and we got to be careful with what we see and what we digest and blah, blah, blah. Turns out this racist ad that people were talking about was fake news because it was outrage over a fake or manipulated advert, right? So besides that, this is interesting because it makes me wonder that, and this has been there's been people that have been analyzing this and talking about this as wokeism that's growing around the world right now, that they cause these racist outbursts, these racial tensions to fund their own agenda, which is basically coming into a company for an exorbitant amount of money, like crazy amounts of money under coaching, right? To try and teach you, like let's say you Dumo own a company, right? And I'm this discrimination training person, okay? I come to your company and I say, hey, so we hear you got racists, but we can help you, okay? We're going to train your employees on how not to be racist. And it's going to be great. But you're going to pay us 500,000 Rand for like the entire 6 months of training, or I don't know how long it is, whatever amount. It's exorbitant, right? I'm not quoting exact numbers here, but I know that it's like crazy expensive. And they go to these big companies. That's what they do. And now they only had, I think, a conspiracy tinfoil hat here. I think that the reason why you get these schools that have these racist outbursts or whatever, the reason why you have companies or businesses also being accused of being racist is so that these people, these discrimination training experts or whatever you want to call them, coaches, can go to businesses and make money by telling those businesses or schools, hey, I'm going to come in now. I'm going to train your staff or your pupils or whatever to not be racist. Pay me, $500,000 and we'll call it quits. I don't know. That's kind of my observation here. I could be way off point. But Dumo, the floor is yours. What do you think of all this?
Okay, so I'll start with your question, and I don't know, should I get on to also the clicks Tresemme thing being fake and whatever?
Yeah, you
But
can talk about whatever you want.
Cool. All right. So, first thing about the ad agencies. Clearly, I'm glad only one company signed up because for me that shows me that these companies knows that this stuff is BS. I think they have seen that. Remember with Coke, Coke did some online training about racism, and then remember an employee took a screenshot and shared it with people, and I think the screenshot was a slide on whiteness, and it was a really really really, I mean, I would say racist thing, right? And then I think Coke distanced themselves from it and they stopped the training as a result, if I'm not mistaken. happened. I know it happened in 2020, but it felt like years ago. But anyway, like 10 years ago. But the reality is that uh, I think companies are starting to realize that this stuff is not really good, because you're going to be teaching your employees about, how not to be racist and microaggressions and stuff like that. And then usually that type of training, it usually targets a specific demographic and labels them as bad and privileged and everything like that. And there's another demographic that's just good, they can't do any wrong and stuff like that. And then that's just really going to divide the workplace. And the last thing that a manager needs, a last thing that a CEO needs of any company or a manager of any department, the last thing that they need is a workforce that's divided and it cannot produce. Because now, all of a sudden, after the training, this guy has to watch what he says the whole time, because he's too scared someone's going to say whatever he said is racist and so forth and so forth. And also, people discuss things. I mean, if you go to the office, um, some people, what they used to do, I remember at a one particular place that I worked at, what guys would do before, this is when we still had face-to-face interactions, what guys would do on their laptops is that while someone is talking, they would send messages on Skype for business and say, hey man, you see what this guy just said right now? Didn't you agree last week that A, B, C, and D should have happened? Now he's changing course. And like it was like that. It was crazy, man. We'd just send messages like that. But I don't know if that has changed. But people talk, right? People talk about these things, right? In the background. And that creates even more division as well. So I think I agree with you when they say it's all about the money, but I'm also happy that only one person signed up. But you know what? If these guys really want to make a savings, these companies, they can call me. I'll do it for free. I mean, all I'm just gonna do is I'm just gonna walk up there in front of a group of millions of people, well, not millions, but like a hall, and they say, "Okay, guys, I'm gonna do training on sensitivity training." Then I'll just pull out one slide and just say, "Treat everyone with respect." Okay, you're done. Bye. That's it. For free. I will
But
do that
oh,
for
for free. I
free.
was about to ask, like, how much would you charge for that? Like 10 second.
For free. I mean, and think about it. Companies now, I mean, think about it. Who are you going to get? Are you going to get the guy who tells you something that actually works, treat people with respect, and he charges nothing for it? Or are you going to get some wokey who's read like all these cultural Marxist
White
nonsense and everything
fragility,
like
yeah.
that, exactly white fragility and a PhD in in a job that won't even in a degree that won't even get your job at McDonald's or wherever, now coming to you, charging you, let's say, close to 100,000 rand per session. They might even charge you per person. Even, I mean, these guys are just sucking the life out of these companies and schools as well. So please, any company that wants racial sensitivity training, please come to me. I have one slide and I'll do it for free. Simple as that. Treat everyone with respect, and you won't have a problem.
Yeah.
Like you'll be good. You'll be
It's
good.
like
Like,
what
what do you need then?
it's like what Canton Pillay said on the show. I think you were also part of that panel. Like he said, just
Yeah,
don't be a dick. Don't be a dick. Like live your life.
exactly.
Don't be a dick. Like it's not that difficult, guys. It really isn't. But you know what? Some people just can't help themselves. Um,
Right.
yeah. So was there anything else you wanted to add?
Yes. One more thing. One more thing. Right. The one I won't take too long. Right. Um, the Judge Dolamo. I have to give Judge Dolamo credit for this ruling that he made on the Clicks Tresemme advert, and I'm glad that the distinction that he made the distinction between the advert that was on the website and what was shared on social media. This is a very important finding, because the advert that was on the Clicks website was there for 4 months before the public outrage. And then the public outrage started when an edited version of that advert was put on social media. So what that tells me is one thing. There was someone was trying to start some sort of racial tension, I think, to take people's attention off what really matters. And at that particular point in time, it was lockdown. People were angry. People were pissed. People losing their jobs and everything like that. And then what happened was this thing comes up. So clearly, I think it was a deliberate attempt to take attention of something. I'm not saying who it is, but I think we know who it is, and it's similar to what the CCP does as well, right? Whenever the economy goes bad, they also push anti foreign rhetoric, and that's exactly what we saw. This is basically another juicy Smolier, basically, but working for a particular organization. So I just wanted to mention that because I think it's really important that now that we know that this was an edited version that was put on social media, who was it? Why did they do it? And also at the same time, clicks lost revenue. They had some they suffered damages. They had to pay people compensation as demanded by the EFF. And Tresemme had also a reputational damage as well. And they need to find these people, sue them, and make amends, because this must not go unpunished, in my opinion.
No, absolutely. I was actually asking about that. Like, I don't know. Maybe the article does mention who the person was, or maybe they don't. I don't know. But hopefully they know who it is, and that person will be held accountable. Because they did that again. What that person did by making that fake ad destroyed not just like businesses, but livelihoods as well. You know, like many click stores were destroyed during like the worst time this could happen, during like lockdown when people were already like losing businesses left, right, and center. So yeah, it's I really hope that person gets brought to book. Nolu saying our industry is going through the most with the racist crap. It's so hard to be creative lest you offend someone. If it's not the feminists, then it's the black people. Shout out to the judge. So she agrees with you on that, and I agree too. This is as Juma was saying earlier. Not all judges are corrupt. Some of them do have a brain and are not poisoned by the ANC. There was a question I wanted to put to you, but I don't think we have time because our the ManPatria crew is going to join us in just a moment. But what I will do is, because it was a question about basically, it's very off topic, by the way. It's kind of, sort of. I was asked a question by Zach. He was watching, I think he was watching my show, one of the videos I have, and he posted a question asking, who do you vote for? Because people are not going to vote for the EFF unless you're lost. ANC has proven they don't, they don't have a solid track record, so they're on the way out. And only the old die-hard cult-like fans will vote for them. And then the DA apparently can't be trusted. So out of all the political parties, who do you vote for? I don't know if you have like
That's a very tough question. I think, in my opinion, definitely not ANC, definitely not EFF, but I will give a range of options. I mean, you could say number one, DA, not to say that should be your first pick or whatever, and I'm not saying it's my first pick. There's also Action SA, which is also, I think, a very good alternative. There's also IFP. I think IFP is also decent. They're not crazy Marxists, which I think is great. So I think IFP is a decent alternative as well, and FF Plus as well. I mean, FF Plus, in my opinion, I don't know. I can see. Imagine EFF people just looking at this and saying, "FF Plus, what?" If, probably those guys think the FF Plus is the NP or something. But anyway, um, I think FF Plus also is decent as well. They're not as liberal as I hope them to be. When I say liberal, I'm not in the American sense, in the classical liberal sense, but I think they're a much better alternative to the ANC and the EFF. So yeah, I think those parties, I think, should be should be shortlisted. Yeah.
yeah, but you see, like, who do you vote for though? Like, I know you gave me options, but who do you vote for?
Joe, that's your decision. Like, I can't tell you to vote for. I could give you a list of who I think you should vote for, but I mean, for example, you may not like IFP because I think they support the death penalty. I may be
I'm
wrong.
for that. They got
Um,
my vote if that's the
oh,
case.
okay, there you go. There you go. And then, like for example, the FF Plus, they're not a big fan of, let's say, legalizing marijuana, for example.
Yeah.
You know what I mean. So that could put someone off, but someone could say, "Ah, there's no point because they, you know, I smoke it anyway, and no one catches me." Not that I do, but someone could think that, right? But yeah, you know what I mean. So like,
Yeah. I
they
think
are decent alternatives. Yeah.
I think the crux of the question is more deeper than that. I think the question to me sounded like, because a lot of people ask this, especially during election period, and it's like, I think what people actually want to ask is, who do we trust? Because if you think about it, Duma, no matter which political party you look at, the first question you're going to ask is, can I trust them? Because
Right.
I think South Africans have been hurt so bad because a lot of them are waking up to the realization that the so-called what's it, dream rainbow nation wasn't exactly what was promised back in the day. It's changed so much. ANC has promised time and time again various things, and they always lie, as we've recently seen with the extension of the lockdown. And opposing political parties, yeah, there's some good ones. I mean, DA does fight back every now and again, and so do the other political parties as well. But it always feels like they do just enough. They do just enough so that people see, hey, we're fighting back, guys. But it's not like a real punch in the face to the ANC. I mean, there's been so many opportunities over the lockdown for the DA to really step up and say, screw you, ANC, we're going to do our own thing. It gets in, I know it's multi-layered and it's complicated and all that stuff, but the point I'm trying to get at is I think when people ask that question, I think they're asking, who do we trust? And is there someone we can trust? I think the answer is
Okay,
no.
I'm gonna be. Yes, I was gonna say no. I remember watching. I want to tell you something really interesting. I remember when Al Gore was going up against George Bush.
Yeah.
Was it Al? No, it wasn't Al. It was John Kerry. Yes, John Kerry. Right. And then Vince McMahon on one of his WWE shows, he did a little opening segment. But he broke character. I think he broke character. And then he was saying that when you vote for someone, vote for the guy who lies the least. That's the one you should vote for. That's the one. And I really think he broke character there. I mean, maybe you should play it one day. But he did a good job. And that stuck with me. I think I was like 14 or 13 when I heard that, right? And it still stuck with me today. So now I understand why he says that, because you can't trust these guys.
Yeah.
You can't trust them. So just vote for the one that doesn't lie to you. Vote for the one who lies the least. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think the party that lies the least is the FF Plus, because they've been the one party that's actually like stuck to their principles. They haven't flip flopped. They haven't gone back or forth. They've stuck to their beliefs and their principles and all that stuff. Like DA flip flops, not as much as EFF, but they do flip flop. I mean, the posters in Durban are a very good example.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with the DA. They always flip flop when it's like the most crucial moment when they shouldn't. You know, like it's like EFF just flip flop because I don't know, Julius wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. I don't know, and obviously ANC flip flops. A lot of parties flip flop, but. Very quickly, before we get too sidetracked, we are expecting Nzuzu and Koketsu to join us. The rest of the ManPatria crew, ladies and gentlemen, are going to join us any moment now. And as soon as they do, we're going to go on a 5-minute break. Well, we're going to go on a 5-minute break in about a minute. And stick around, ladies and gentlemen, because we're going to have our panel evening. And I'm joined by Dumo Denga, Nzuzu, and Koketsu. They're all part of the ManPatria crew, and we're going to chat about, does black privilege exist? You know, white privilege, right? The whole white privilege discussion, that people talk about. Well, we're going to ask the question, does black privilege exist? Does the opposite of white privilege exist? We're going to have a nice, interesting discussion about that. So, Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, in just a few moments, we're going to go on a break. Dumo, is there anything you wanted to add very quickly to what we were talking about earlier?
Nothing.
Okay,
Nothing.
cool.
Thanks, Joe.
Zach, I hope that answers your question to some extent. But at the end of the day, Duma, you're all right. At the end of the day, voting is your own personal choice, whether you want to vote for the DA, EFF, ANC, IFP, FF Plus. It's your complete democratic right to vote for whoever you want to vote for. I will never tell you who to vote for. You have to make that decision on your own. And just read. Like, get to know these parties and vote for the one that, like, exactly what Duma said, or Vince McMahon. Vote for the one who lies the least. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. And Matthew, there's something new to the ad, not the music, but there is something new to the ad, which will answer that question. Because Matthew's asking if I can play rock music during the break. They don't like my jazz music. It does sound a bit lobby-ish. But but there's a reason why, and if you watch the ad, I've changed it a little bit, and it will explain why. All right, we'll be back in 5 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, with Kaketso and Inzuzu. Cheers. Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. While we're having a bit of a break and while we're here, I just thought I would let you guys know that you can become a member to this channel. When you become a member to this channel, there are 2 tiers. There's the Support Act and the Headliner Act. Each tier has its own perks. I'm not going to go into all the details right now, but just click on the join button, usually right next to the subscribe button. If you haven't subscribed yet, by the way, subscribe. If you want to become a member, it would be greatly appreciated. It really goes a long way to supporting the channel and helping me to continue to create content for you guys. And just in case you might be interested, for some of you who may not know, I am also a stand-up comedian, and I have a one-man show coming up in June of this year. There is a link in the description with all the details that you need to know, when, where, and how much, so please go check it out in the description below. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Joe Emilio Show. This is panel evening, and I'm joined by the ManPatria crew, ladies and gentlemen. If you missed the first half with me and Dumo, well, too bad. You can watch it in replay. But I'm now with the ManPatria team, Dumo and Koketso and Nzuzu. Nzuzu, by the way, thank you so much for joining. It's the first time you're on my show, and I'm grateful that you're here. It's a pleasure to finally meet you, man. I've watched so many of the ManPatria streams, and it really is awesome to have you with us. So I just wanted to say that, and then
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Um,
cool, awesome.
yeah, man. I think this thing is also behind for a bit.
Yeah, there is somewhere on
Or
your
is it just me?
side. There's an up and down arrow. Wait, up and down arrow. You should see it somewhere. And then if you click that, it's going to
Yes,
switch
I see it.
views, but it will fix the lag. Should fix the lag.
Okay. Okay.
Cool. Ladies and
Cool, cool.
gentlemen,
Thanks, man.
no worries. All right. And Kaketsu and Duma, as always, it's great to have you back on the show. Look, I proposed this topic to Duma, and I said, would the ManPatria crew like to talk about it? He said yes. I'm not too sure what to expect, but I will handle this topic with sensitivity, of course. But I do want to talk about it because I think it's something that people do talk about in their when they're having brides together or whatever it might come up. But I don't think anybody's talking about this openly enough anyway. So the question is, does black privilege exist, which is basically the opposite of white privilege? And I know that some people are going to have a heart attack with me just even saying that, but calm down. It's a question. I'm just asking a question. And I would really like to know your guys' opinion. In my opinion, I think it does. Ooh, I've gotten in trouble now. But someone's going to clip that. I'm going to be in so much trouble. But yeah, who would like to get a crack at it first? Should we start with Koketsu? I want to hear your view on this. Just I don't know, just let us have it. What do you think? Do you think it exists?
Okay, so maybe let's rewind. I think privilege is definitely a thing. There's certainly no one who wouldn't say privilege as a concept or privilege at large doesn't exist. So when we now talk of privilege, we can then get into the finer details of, effectively race-based privilege. And I want to use that term race-based privilege because it is privilege that effectively is awarded to individuals, collectives of people, etc., based on race. And then when we draw down further from privileged, remember we start off at privilege, we go into race-based privilege, and then when we drill down even further and start saying, right, now you start naming the races, and you then look at privilege from that perspective. Based on that, it is not incorrect to then say that black privilege does exist. So I'll make an example. Our current employment equity laws are the perfect textbook example of black privilege. That is, if you are black, you are privileged enough to effectively be first in line or cut the line when it comes to economic policy. That is, an offshoot of affirmative action. That is a form of privilege. It means that irrespective of who you are, the skill set you bring in, and so forth, by virtue of you being black, you get to receive an advantage of some sort, and that is a privilege that others who are not black don't have. So that's a form of privilege, of course, much in the same way that if you're the guy with the lovely car, you get to have certain privileges. That is, ladies look your way more often than if you didn't have the lovely car. Rinse and repeat. If you smell good, dress good, speak well, etc., etc., that is a form of privilege. So based on that, we can't not say that black privilege does exist. And I'm using the very basic example of employment equity laws in the Republic of South Africa, and it's very difficult to argue then that it doesn't exist, even if you come off the side or by mentioning things, what's the word they use, restorative justice, etc. It may be restorative justice in one person's perspective, but then you have to say that that restorative justice applies privilege aka black privilege, to reach its outcome or to achieve its goals. So yeah, it definitely does exist, and anyone who wants to argue against that, to me at least, will find it very difficult to.
All right, I think that's a good place to start. But I think another thing that maybe we should also mention is like maybe we should define what white privilege is and black privilege is. So, Dumo, do you want to get a crack at the definitions, or should I Google quickly?
Yeah, I think you should Google it because I don't want to
Google isn't always
misrepresent it.
reliable, though. So, I mean, asking you guys is probably more credible than Google, to be honest. Let's see, white privilege. Okay, now white privilege forgiveness comes up. Um, definition. Okay, so according to Google, all right, again, it's Google. Inherent advantages possessed by a white person on the basis of their race in a society characterized by racial inequality and injustice. Okay, Dumo, what does that mean?
Yeah, I think you're right, Joe, when you said that sometimes Google gets the wrong definition. I think that definition is wrong. White privilege is not dependent, in my opinion. It's not dependent on inequality. It's dependent on what advantages you are given because of the color of your skin. So that's the issue. So, and that's the same thing that Koketso mentioned now with regards to black privilege. If you look at the Employment Equity Act, it does put black people at the head of the lines of white people. And one could even say, even during apartheid, there was white privilege because there were certain jobs that were reserved for whites and so forth and so forth. So I don't like that Google definition. I think it's not intuitive enough. That's the thing. I mean, I can understand if a definition is not intuitive, but again, it shouldn't go way off the rails. You know what I mean? Like, it shouldn't try to add its own thing there. Like, for example, I mean, if you look at the definition of racism, for example, and then you'll find that a lot of people say racism requires power. And we all know that it doesn't, but they just put it there because they're trying to conveniently leave out a certain race out of being defined as being racist as well. So I disagree with that definition. I tend to lean to what Koketo says. It's the advantages and privileges that you have given your skin color, and I think by a government or something like that. Or it can be a company as well, but I mean, or any organization.
Would
But
you,
sometimes it.
would you,
Mhm.
sorry. Would you say that, okay, let's take the definition of privilege and take out the white, and then out there read it as it is, which means it's a special right, advantage, or immunity, advantage, an underlying advantage granted or available to only a particular person or a group. Let's say, for example, as a result of socioeconomic circumstances, such as yeah, when people go to get a loan from a bank, it's much more difficult for a black person to get a loan from a bank as compared to a white person. Those are the statistics. Now, would you say that that's a privilege that is granted to white people, and that's white privilege? I'm asking. Just playing devil's advocate.
Oh, okay. I would say I would answer it and just say no, because the bank is not rejecting them because they of their skin color. The bank would be rejecting them because of their affordability. That's the reality. It's not now. Yes, there was apartheid, and yes, it did put a lot of people on the back foot. But when the bank checks if someone can afford, they're going to look at what money is going into the account, how much money it is, and if it's not enough, then they're going to reject you and say, "Well, you can't afford the loan." So yes, it could be that there's a disparity at the end of the day, but a disparity does not necessarily mean that there's some sort of like advantage. In fact, what about I'm pretty sure if you had to look among whites, let's just look at whites specifically, who there are probably white people who do get rejected for loans as well. Then what privilege do they have over each other? Is it racial, or is it because of where they live? Is it because of where they of what they do, or whatever. I would just say it's the money that goes into the bank account. But yes, if you look at the disparity, you can draw the line across the races, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that disparity exists because of race. And I think that's, we have to be very careful of that. So, yeah, so I wouldn't say that white people have an inherent advantage over black people when it comes to getting a loan from the bank. But I would say that, look, if you do have a lot of money, you do have an advantage over someone who doesn't have money in getting a loan. That's what I would say. That's the advantage, is how much money you have, not because of your skin
Look, I
color.
want to
Because if
piggyback.
you are because of your Mhm. Go ahead, Koketsu, go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I wanted to piggyback off that by, if you look at, maybe let's step away from the money talk and the economics talk, etc. Let's now move it to sports teams. Ever notice how if a white guy who isn't selected for, let's say, the cricket team, if they're not selected, everyone quickly assumes then that no, it is because he lacks the skill or he's not the best person in that position, etc., etc. But soon as a black guy is not selected, nowadays, very quickly you'll hear those coming off, off the fringes coming out then saying that he's not being selected because he's black. So black privilege also means being afforded the benefit of the doubt in instances where such benefit doesn't actually be warranted. An unskilled black player not being selected for a team um, creates a scenario where questions are asked based on their skin color, of course. But a white guy who isn't selected, an Indian guy who isn't selected, a colored guy who isn't selected, they don't get the same privilege if they're not selected for the same team in the same sport, for example. So that's another example of black privilege. I know we like to use the money talk really because everyone kind of leans towards that, but even outside economic circumstance, such as the sports field, it still applies even there.
Oh,
Okay.
and one more thing, sorry, Nzuzo. It'll be quick. So I'm not. I just wanted to make it clear to the audience. I'm not saying that white or black privilege does not exist. We're just saying that in many circumstances, there are other elements that can explain the disparity among race. Yeah,
Go ahead and see.
besides race.
Okay, no, I was gonna say that I think I think that white, as Dumo just said, now white and black privilege does exist in different circumstances, and it's sometimes it's not down to the fact that you are white. It's just as a result of other circumstances being or other reasons being at play in the situation. I take for example in the legal fraternity when they ask you to be when they ask candidate attorneys to have a car for purposes of getting or for being likely to be hired as a candidate attorney at a law firm. And you're most likely going to find that it's white people who are going to have cars as opposed to black people. Because, as explained by Dumo, it's not necessary as a result of you being white, but it's as a result of other factors being at play. But you can you can interpret it as being white privilege in a sense that yes you are, it's not necessarily because you're white, but it results in mostly white people having that opportunity to get the job. At the end of the day it can be interpreted as that, in my opinion. I've seen not necessarily I've seen, but I think that both privileges exist. I think that obviously with black privilege, it exists even on paper. We see it with BE laws. We even see it with quotas. We see it, and you also see it off of paper, such as when the SAHRC, the South African Human Rights Commission, goes after white people when they're accused of being racist, as opposed to kids that are videotaping themselves saying that they don't like white people, and yet they still don't have any person or any institution going after them. That's black privilege. I think that sometimes you can say you can say the same thing about white privilege, but it's obviously some, as I said, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's as a result of you being white. It's just a result of other circumstances being at play at the time. So yeah, that's just what I think.
Mm.
But you can. It's an open-ended debate for Yeah, I don't. For also, like, for another thing I also want to say is that don't we always want privilege in a sense?
Well,
Don't we always work
Yeah.
towards people having privilege? I mean, we want our kids to have the privilege to go to a school which we previously couldn't go because we didn't have the cash. So it's quite difficult to say I'm not necessarily I'm against privilege because it's what I work hard for every single day to provide to my family. The privilege to be
yeah,
able to go to Woolworths as opposed to ShopRite, and no offense to obviously ShopRite, but nonetheless,
it
have
is
that
what it
opportunity.
is.
That option. Yeah, yeah, exactly. It is what it is.
Sure.
Sorry, and Zuzu, I just want to ask you because you brought up a good point there about what people can say and what people can't say. In my opinion, I think Julius has a lot of black privilege because he can say those things like with the EFF versus AfriForum that we saw. He said these horrible, horrible things. But I always ask, like, okay, so what if a white person was saying that, or an Indian person, or an Asian person? You know, imagine the outrage that would have just overcome the entire South Africa. I mean, we saw outrage with the clicks ad. So, would you say that that's another form of black privilege?
Yeah, yeah, I would say that's a form of black privilege. I think that look, I'm not saying that. Yeah, it's it is a form of black privilege. It's just that I don't want to necessarily say that it's always going to be a case. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to be black privilege in a sense. Sometimes tables can change where it could also be white privilege if it was apartheid. I'm just saying that sometimes it's just an open-ended debate, and I don't want to go continuously talking about it because at the end of the day, it doesn't solve the issue that we have at hand. And it's like a leftist argument. It's an open-ended thing. We're going to keep on going, such as racism.
Mm.
There's always going to be racism because there's different types of discrimination that can result in racism, such as I'm having to I don't date Indians. No offense to Indians, no necessary, but I just don't find them attractive. Stuff like that. So that's just what I think. But nonetheless, yeah, definitely has black privilege. Let's talk about the fact that, like I said, we just saw a video of a young girl from St. Mary's talking about how much she doesn't like white people, and then after that, there's no outrage in that sense to what she says. I think that's black privilege in of itself. Um, I think also, for example,
Oh,
the
sorry,
ability to
Zuzo.
see huh? Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. So she never got any flack because she was black.
Yes, yes, she
Yes,
never got
I'm
any
just
flag.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, I don't
Sorry
think
to
she
interrupt.
got any flag because she was black. Um, Shit, now I even lost my train of thought.
Sorry, man. Sorry, I apologize.
No, no. But yeah, I think that black privilege does exist, and it exists sometimes also exists. I think with the pure with good intentions in the sense that we're trying to obviously correct um this kind of handle the spice is free. That's a good one, man.
Yeah,
But
I'm gonna let you finish, and then I'm gonna counter you, Nzuzo.
Okay, cool.
yeah, you can counter now quick. So I just can't get this comment out of my mind right now. It's quite
Yeah,
funny.
sorry, I don't know if you guys can see, but Behave, one of the viewers said that Nzuzu just can't handle the spice Indians bring. That's why. Yes.
Okay, so you can speak. You
Hey,
can
I don't
speak now.
think that's behave. I think that's Bavesh or Bhavna or
Maybe.
Yeah.
That's Bav. Yeah, Bav.
Um,
Bav.
yeah.
I call
Anyway,
him Behave. Anyway, Kuketsu, go ahead.
Yeah, Nzuzo, you said sometimes that there's what you said it exists. There's good in there's, yeah. You said something that it can bring some semblance of good or something like that. You're saying,
no, no, no. I was saying that sometimes
am I
it can
right in
exist as a
assuming that's
no. Let me correct myself if I said it wrong. I said that it can exist as a result of the policymakers or the legislature legislature having good intentions. But of course, I'm not going to take away the fact that the results do not meet the intentions, but it can exist as a
Okay.
result of people having the pure intentions to do right against people who've been wronged.
So here's the problem with that, right? If you look at a professional space, talking now about a professional workspace, and I'll use this example because I think it's maybe a more mature example than the whole debate around hair in schools, etc. But in a professional workspace, I think everyone does understand what looking presentable basically means. It's as ubiquitous as explaining right from wrong. We all know what it is. It doesn't need a manual. It doesn't need a standard operating procedure or anything of that sort. But there's also a semblance of black privilege in that when someone rocks up with hair that looks like Mbuyiseni Quinton Ndlozi's hairstyle, and a beard that doesn't connect and looks like a half-grown patch of grass, for example, that's not a professional look. It's not. But black privilege also means that he can get away and say that no, this is the natural look. This is how our, this is how we naturally are, and this thing of fetching a comb is something that was basically introduced by colonialists who wanted to impose order by discriminating against black people, etc. You know, the problem with that level of black privileges, by extension, what people are effectively saying is that in the absence of such rules or such societal standards, black people are a potent mess, even when it comes to their grooming. And for me, that's bigotry. But black privilege means people get to say these things and even get away with it. Or the whole Zuleika Patel situation when she was still a high schooler. I don't care who says what. That was too much hair. And even in a black community in the most rural of rural South Africa, even then the principal won't even allow you to wear that as your hairstyle. In fact, in rural South Africa, you get a hiding. There's no, hey, child rights. You get a hiding for having that much hair. Your parents get called in. Even the community will shun you as a parent for allowing your child to go to school looking like that. That is what it is. But black privilege means you get to do that, and the moment you get called out for it, be it by a school constitution, be it by general work standards or managers telling you to look more presentable. Black privilege means you can quickly turn around and say that you are actually discriminating against me, and not just myself, but discriminating against people of color at large because this is how. This is an acceptable way to look in a professional setting, and that's not necessarily the case. Even the white guy has to comb his hair every day and groom his beard, etc., etc. These things aren't specifically created to target or discriminate against black people. It's a way of saying that we need to maintain a standard that goes across the board, irrespective of the color of your skin. But somehow, there are people who want to exercise black privilege and effectively make themselves the exception to the rule under the pretense of black privilege again.
Can I say one thing?
Go ahead.
One thing I just want to just mention as well is that I think I like the examples that Nzuzo and Koketso are bringing up, because these happen like in social interactions. You know what I mean? I think, when I look at privilege, especially when you talk about white and black privilege, I always limit it to legislation. Reason why I do that is because of the fact that as a libertarian, I don't think the government should put laws in place that discriminate one race over the other. So I would say that because I define it in that sense, I would say that if someone say, does white or black privilege exist? In present day South Africa, I would say black privilege exists because of the BEE and the Equity Act and so forth. And again, in apartheid, I would also say white privilege existed. But now, if we had to remove all these racist laws, I would say white and black privilege does not exist. However, I think Koketso and Zuzo brought up, like, what about these social interactions? Like, for example, when a black person does not get selected for a team, they say, oh, it's racism. But when it's a white person, people go and say, people don't say anything, right? And then the question with the hair as well. I think that is the question, perhaps maybe that people want answered, is really the social interactions. But I think that it kind of also depends on the individual. So if I view a situation, let's say I see Zulaika Patel, right? And then she's got long hair, and I go, whatever, leave it alone. You know what I'm saying? But another person says, no, 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 her hair is long. It needs to be cut. You know, that type of thing, right? Now, I think in that type of situation, would the only challenge I would have rather is that, does Zuleika have privilege? Let's say, for example, um, if one person says she must cut it and the other one says she doesn't, does that privilege exist? Even if she ends up not covering her, not cutting her hair. So I know that's a bit of a like a curved ball, but in the social interactions, I think it's much more difficult to say whether white. So I say it's much more difficult to say whether white or black privilege exists in those social situations. But that's not to say that it doesn't. It's just that it's hard to spot it. That's what I would say. Yeah, just given what those
Interesting.
guys said. Yeah,
Did anybody want to rebuttal on that or add to that?
No, I'm good. No, no,
I
no,
think
I'm
Koketsu
good.
would disagree with me there.
Well, I was kind of waiting for
I don't know,
Kaketsu to say something.
Koketsu. I know you're gonna disagree with me here. What is it? I need to know.
Not necessarily. Look, I mean, I do agree with you mostly. It is very difficult in a societal setting to actually lay down a lot of these rules. But well, I'm not as egalitarian as I thought I am, but yeah, I do agree with the principle that it is absolutely wrong to create laws that specifically outline groups of people and set aside a subset of rules for them. And so if you use the hair example, right, if you say long hair is long hair, right, and the problem I have is you have people who then say, no, in my culture this isn't considered long hair. That's you basically saying that, no, I demand you set aside me, and introduce a new subset of rules for me to appease me and my culture. And that's not exactly how that's not exactly equality. That creates a you versus them, rules for me and not for you, therefore it's privilege.
Okay. Um, I will not disagree with that. I think you laid it right. You laid it out well there.
Yeah,
I think that's a clear example.
it's getting interesting now because I did want to get into the social aspect of it, because I think that's where things like it's touchy in a way, but at the same time, like I don't know how to say this, but I think the best way to kind of explain what I'm trying to get at is like I googled if Google has a definition for black privilege. It doesn't. It just comes up with articles of stuff like random articles, CNN, like the one headline from 2016 says it's time to talk about black privilege. That was in 2016. That's about it. Like there's no, when you Google white privilege, there's a definition clear as day at the top, but with black privilege it isn't. And I think do you guys think that as part of this, what's going on in society right now, one of the things that it feels like, I don't know if it's the left or if it's society itself, is saying like you can't say black privilege. That you just can't say that. You know what I mean? Because of how touchy it is. Koketsu, you can go ahead with that.
Yeah, I was actually thinking of it just as you brought it up. Look, I don't like how we got here, firstly, and I'll make the example of, I remember when ABSA launched their Africanacity rebrand slash campaign, etc. And then on their social media, they posed the question of what does black tax mean to you? Something along those lines. And people lost their minds. Why? Because even when it comes to discussing some of these things, right, you have people who genuinely believe that, some conversations should not be had, that some conversations are the exclusive domain to only be discussed by people of a certain color. It goes hand in hand with how people treat their inward, how some people are allowed to say it but others aren't allowed to say it. It creates a class of us versus them. So I don't like how society actually got here. And it's gotten to the point where we can't even talk about these things anymore, because the moment you're not black, people assume that you cannot speak on black issues. But that's not really the case. I mean, I've got a financial advisor who isn't black, and I remember on one of our early interactions, he asked me straight up when it comes to my how my money looks, where my money goes, and he did ask that. Look, I know black tax is a thing, so let's have that conversation. Is it a thing for you? How much goes into this? So he can offer financial advice that factors it in. As a non-black person, it didn't matter. As a financial advisor, it did. Now imagine I then come out and say, "How can you say such a thing?" That conversation around how much black tax I pay or don't pay should not be discussed with someone who's non-black. It would be foolish, right? So it's very foolish to then exclude these things in societal conversations. In fact, all that does is it just stagnates society when it comes to some of these issues. And you can see that people have actually stagnated in their views, that they can't even have these conversations. They want to have conversations about everything else. You can have conversations about whether children, whether boys are boys and girls are girls, but you don't want to have conversation about whether something like black privilege or black tax, etc., should exist. Come on, I find that immature. Actually, I mean, we're all adults here, hopefully, so we should be able to have meaningful discussions in as a way of actually bettering ourselves and potentially bettering even our communities by virtue of having a better understanding based on other people's understanding and definitions. But yeah.
No, eloquently put. Zuzu, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, man. Koketsu really touched on the heart of it. But yeah, man, black people. I think everyone knows, or everyone has seen now, particularly in the West, and I do also consider South Africa as a westernized country in a sense. Black people are really a protected group, and once you poke the bear, shit start hitting the fan, and that's the issue that Koketsu is really talking about. You can't even have real conversations with with people in this group because they just become sensitive when you try to really tell them the truth of the circumstances and really try to help them. And when I say even black people, black women are even worse. You cannot criticize them. You cannot criticize. I mean, if you see someone who's overweight, bruh, and I say I don't like overweight chicks, dude, I don't like overweight chicks. I'm not being fat phobic. I just like and that's the issue, like you trying to make facts to the matter, and they just try to really just kick you out the debate on based on feelings over facts. They try to sing to your morals rather than the facts of the matter. At the end of the day, we know that as a result of um, social welfare, black people have become entitled ever since social welfare has been put into the system. And speaking about that, really sets off the black activists, the weed selling disease and stuff, and people like that, and people of a similar nature. And it's difficult to really solve the issue because everyone wants to hear what they like rather than what the truth is. And the difficulty in that is that we don't solve no issues, we don't solve no problems, we don't um, we don't get to the crux of the issue, which is that you can't that the social welfare system is unsustainable. It cannot help you. You're not going to be better off with it because at the end of the day, you're still earning 350 as compared to 1,000 rand, which is of course more. You're still earning way more It's still earning way more when you actually work for somebody as compared to being on the social welfare. Plus, the more people that get on social welfare, the less people who actually pay taxes, which then means that it will become unsustainable because those people cannot afford the tax that is required of us to pay. Therefore, they just leave a country or they move their assets across the borders because at least then they're not taxed as heavily um, as they would be in South Africa. Therefore, the money leaves for purpose. The money that is required for service delivery is not there. Energy. I can go on and on and on. But if I can't even tell you if if I just tell you that you are entitled as a result of you being mollycoddled by the government by way of the social welfare system and also the BEE and also employment equity and all that stuff, you know, it blows their mind, and that's why you'll see people going having being outraged in respect of the Tremese ad, the clicks ad, which it literally was, for a week or two, the only thing that people were talking about, and the outrage was just out of this world, as compared to um, as compared to a child that's saying that she doesn't like white people. I mean, if your child is saying such things, I'll be a bit scared. Like, imagine my child coming home and saying that I don't like John that I see every day. I'll be like, dog, so what are you gonna do about that? What, are you gonna whip his ass? You gonna kill him? It's a bit scary. It's a bit scary when you hear such things coming out of a child's mouth, and we don't want to address it. And if I was saying these type of things back in the day, I'll be getting a hiding. I'm not. Why are you causing such trouble? That's what my dad would say. Well, my mom would say, why you wanna be famous in regards to making a ruckus rather than actually being famous in regards to doing well at school. And back in the day, people would actually get, kids would actually get reprimanded for these type of antics. Nowadays, you have parents who are part of SGPs that are literally pushing this agenda. And when you tell them that the causes have no factual matrix surrounding it, or there's no factual base that there's no factual foundation in which they complaints actually rely on. Then after it, they go ham, and then after they say that you either Uncle Tom, um, you're smart, you're a clever black, or whatever other type of insult they try to swirl at your in your direction, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating when you have a government that's doing what the ANC is doing now, and then you still have a populace which is as sensitive as a 3-month old baby when it comes to certain issues. When it comes to actually discussing issues which are of critical importance, how important it is to have, how important it is to have a 50 pass mark at a high school or a primary school. For you to pass a matric, you must have a 50 pass. It's if it's not, it's fraud. That matric certificate is fraud. But yet, people feel like we should be allowing people to pass because the situation at home is not good. Well, bro, he's not gonna get hired anyway. So why not just put him to the grinder and let him fight that, so that he's prepared when he has to go on to bigger and better things. So it's difficult to really assist the black community when it's full of people who are sensitive, who always want to be mollycoddled, and who want to remain a protected group. That's the problem. Because when you're a protected group, you essentially put yourself in a bubble, and it just shows how and if you've seen, it's very difficult to it's very difficult for people of other races to really how do I say, not connect, but really befriend people from our race and really assist, is because they're walking on eggshells around us. If you say one thing, then it's over for you. And it seems as though even people in those minority races believe the same thing. And so you'll see people like, fuck, I forgot her name, she just slipped my name. Mpofu Wolf is white mother. I don't know what's that lady's name. I forgot her name, but she's one of the craziest ladies I've actually heard speak about race. She sounds like that lady who um, who wrote a book about white privilege in the U.S. I forgot what her name is, but she essentially
Robin
said
D'Angelo.
that yes, 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 and yeah, she had some crazy theories on white privilege and stuff like that. So it becomes, and then after that, there's also the theatrics. You know what I mean? The EFF trashing a store because They actually, because they assume that the company is racist. You know what I mean? We focus on those type of things as opposed to getting kids the education that they require so that they can pull themselves and their families out of poverty. So that's the difficulty with dealing with a protected group is that you find so many you have to deal with the theatrics before you even deal with the core issues, and that's the problem.
Do you guys think that if ANC was not in power, that this black privilege and everything that Nzuzu just spoke about would, I don't want to say like disappear, but I mean, in a way, get better, if I could put it that way? Dumo?
Okay, I'll start. Before I answer, I just want to make one concession to Nzuzo quickly. Um, you know that situation with the banks and giving loans? Um, there is one situation where white people will have privilege in getting loans. It's when the bank says we're giving you this loan because you're white. That's the only time. And that can also work for black people as well. But anyway, so I just wanted to make that concession. So I'm not saying it's totally impossible, but it's possible, but I don't think it happens. But if the ANC were not in power, would this thing get better? It might. It might get better. But I think that you've got a lot of people who make money off pushing these narratives. Thomas Sowell referred to this as the race industry. So these are people, and he put it in. He didn't mince his words when he said this. He said these are people that study soft subjects at university. They don't learn the hard skills, like for example, like studying law. Okay, they all work people in law, but you know what I mean, like law, engineering, science, and everything like that. The tough subjects, they don't study those ones. They study the soft ones, and then eventually they think they have all the answers on how to solve problems in society. But the problem is that when they look at the engineer and they see his career path, then they look at their own career path and then they can see they don't have much prospects there. So these people are like are very fertile soil for wokeism and stuff like that. So we see a lot of that happening even in varsities today, and even when I was in university. So there will be those people who will make a living off that, and unfortunately, I don't know if it would get better. It could, if more people can see through it. But unfortunately, many people don't see through it, and a lot of them they really going to push this type of stuff, and stopping them is going to be a very very tough challenge, but it is possible. So I would say that it might, but also just given the race industry, the incentives, and really the rhetoric that's being pushed, it'll be a very difficult thing to see, but definitely possible.
Kuketsa, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, Thomas Sowell's what, Intellectuals and Race. One of the best books I've ever read. Yeah, uh, 10 out of 10 book there. Thick as well. So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's exactly that. I wanted to say, Dum, while you were saying there, that it's not that they study soft subjects. They study subjects, well, maybe I'll paraphrase here, but they study subjects where your opinion doesn't matter. So that's anything where, yeah, when it comes to law, there's the constitution. Your opinion doesn't matter. Uh, all sciences, engineering, etc. Your opinion literally doesn't matter. But yeah, the question, would this be such an issue if the ANC weren't in power? Look, I think the ANC is partly responsible or partly to blame for how we actually got here. And I say this because the ANC have a firm belief that someone actually said it on the radio, I believe on Sunday, that they have a firm belief that big business is bad. Big business is bad because socialism. A big business exploits you. Big business basically creates monopolies, etc. They'll say all of these things, except, right, big asterisk, big business is not bad when the big business is a state-owned entity, when the big business is the government, when the big business is headed up by effectively a known cadre who donates quite generously to the African National Congress. So based on the preface of this, right? Um, yeah, I'm just trying to find my way back here, but based on this, right, we find ourselves here because primarily because the ANC doesn't believe in anything that furthers any sort of agenda or any progress outside of itself. And this includes the very notion that if you are black and you're not economically empowered, then it is the fault of someone like a big business. So of course, if the ANC wasn't in power, I don't think things would have been as bad. Why? Because we wouldn't have had this much socialism at the very least. We would have had a more freer market, hopefully. And in a free market, people would absolutely live in a meritocracy, not in an environment where your race tends to take precedence over many other things, of course. That's my personal belief. It can be easily thrown aside, of course, if you have, instead of the ANC, someone who is completely more left leaning, completely more authoritarian, something closer to a Russia where you've got the state at the top, followed closely by state oligarchs.
Absolutely. I think I don't know. I think it would tamper down a lot. I would like to think that if the ANC wasn't in power, that there would be less focus on race and all that stuff. But we only know that once the ANC isn't in power. But to get back to the topic at hand, I think you guys have definitely given a good case for why it does exist, and the negatives thereof of this black privilege. I wanted to ask you guys though, is there a way to solve it? Because Nzuzu was kind of touching on possible ways to like solutions, but I want to hear from Dumo and Koketso. Do you guys think there's like, I don't know if solution is the right term to use, but I mean, clearly when you have a girl at a school saying these horrible things, right? I mean, they were absolutely horrible. Any other person who said this who wasn't black would have been absolutely slaughtered, or not slaughtered, but like, taken apart. And outrage would have been huge, right? So there is a bit of black privilege because she was able to say those things. Now, that to me is a problem because you have people like this, people like Julius, that are allowed basically to say these things, and you don't know who else is going to hear it and all that stuff, and just cause this whole cascade of evil rhetoric that will live on and on and on. Is there a way to combat this? I mean, I don't think white privilege is a good thing, so let me also make that clear. But privilege is privilege, like we discussed at the beginning of the show. Like, everybody wants privilege, and privilege in itself is not necessarily a bad thing, right? So how do we so I guess what I'm trying to ask is, like, should we be calling out those that are abusing this black privilege, if I can put it that way? Or should it be a case of, like, there shouldn't be any white privilege, there shouldn't be any black privilege? It's a very philosophical question here. Dumo, you can go first.
Yeah, it's a very tough question. I think the first thing is that I mean, I'll steal from Dave Benatar, because when he was speaking on a podcast about his time at UCT and how UCT fell, and one thing that he said that, when you look at someone, you don't know what they've gone through. When you see someone, you just see them as a person, and we shouldn't try to make judgments based on their skin color, that type of thing. But of course, I mean, we as human beings, we do make judgments based on other things. So let's say, for example, I see a pretty woman, I would assume that she's straight, but I could hit on her and she says, no, I don't date guys, that type of thing. So we do have those preconceptions that are based on patterns and stuff like that. But there's one important element that should be learned, is that, sometimes those expectations can be not met. You can be surprised by them, and you should be willing to be surprised by them, or willing to be open to that. So I think that's probably the first thing. And then the second thing is just that we shouldn't try. I don't think we should try to like eliminate privilege. Like just like if we see like a black privilege thing, we we eliminate. And I think we should just follow a philosophy of like, hey, this person, like that girl at St. Mary, said really horrible things about white people. Is what she's saying wrong? Yes. Should she be punished? That's another story. But if we're going to call her out for doing that, then if a white person says that about a black person, then we should call them out as well. So there should be equal standards applied to people. Because the problem is that when you use different standards based on race, you are saying that there's like these fundamental differences between the races that justifies that different treatment. And that could be seen as the bigotry of low expectations. And then you'll have that situation where you have a lefty agreeing with the white supremacist on certain policies, even though their foundations are very different. I don't know if you saw that comedy skit where they showed a hardcore leftist and a racist, and then the hardcore leftist says, I don't think white people should be dating black people because when white people date black people, they're just doing it to enforce their privilege. And then the racist says, well, blacks and whites shouldn't be dating at all because I want to keep my race pure, that type of thing. So they end up agreeing on a policy, even though they have two different motivations. So we should use the same standard when judging people. So I think ultimately, it starts there. Let's judge people as people, and not on race. Now I know some people want to say, "Oh, but Dumo, what about between men and women?" Now there are differences between men and women, and those differences do have outcomes in many things, like in sports, the choices that women make in terms of careers and stuff like that. I mean, if you look at countries like Denmark, where the social variability is very low, you find that the jobs that men and women take, the variability in that is very high because the social variability is low. But in countries where the social variability is high, men and women tend to take similar jobs. So when it comes to gender, those differences are there. But it doesn't mean that we should treat the genders differently in the sense that they have privilege. We recognize those differences, but we treat them as human beings. But yes, there will be certain outcomes that will occur based on their gender. Yeah, so I think we should just, ultimately treat people with respect. Yes, you will have expectations, but guess what? Those expectations, you may be surprised given certain situations. So that's my thing.
All right, cool. Kuketsu?
Yeah, like what Dumo said, my take, three solutions or three ways to solve it concurrently. First one, I would say patriotism. This is something the Americans got right, well, especially pre-Obama, I would say. Have a concept of you are an American. Yeah, you are an American. It doesn't matter where you're from, where you immigrated from, where your ancestry lies, etc. You are an American, and so the patriotism is really what takes precedence over and above everything else. Whether you speak good English, whether you can speak Spanish or not in the South, it doesn't matter. Once you can instill a sense of patriotism, that leads into other things. That is, if we start looking at, let's say, what happens there at SASA, things like grants. Grants then become available to all. Now, I don't agree with grants, of course, but that's a separate discussion. But things like grants, there wouldn't be such a thing as a socially, let's say, a socially acceptable black grant or white grant. And I'll make an example out of this 351. I know people who are not black who have been turned away because of some arbitrary reason, such as, oh no, but you have been employed in the last 3 months. And then they use that as an excuse, and that's how you end up having someone who's of Indian origin not receiving a 350 Rand grant. Even though on paper they say it's for unemployed people, but yeah, you are not unemployed enough when you're not black. Therefore, they find reasons to not give you 350. So it's things like that. Second parallel thing I would say is, look, I believe a lot of things have actually been addressed, particularly by Judeo Christianity. When you look at the commandment of love your neighbor, as you love yourself. It didn't come with terms and conditions. This is in stark contrast to a religion like Islam, where it says, no, you love your neighbor if they accept Allah and Allah's messenger, of course. You don't get that in Christianity. It literally says it doesn't matter who they are. Love your neighbor, not because they believe the same thing as you, but simply because it's another human being. And you'll find this across many other religions as well that typically preach love, tolerance, etc., etc. That's the second one. Then the third one, really, on how to, I don't know, I would say apply effects is just get rid of all these race-based laws. Don't put inside of your legislation something that puts a condition based that looks at someone's skin, for example. That's not how you actually unify people. There is no unity in telling people that, right, okay, before this law can apply to you, we need to know what race you are, for example. That doesn't help the situation at all. You are really just perpetuating the division between blacks, whites, Indians, colors, Chinese, etc., etc. And the same applies even for gender. Why should you know what someone's gender is before you decide to employ them? But we're here because the law says you are scored differently based on the color of your skin and what private parts you were born with and or what you identify as. So let's get rid of that in legislation, and then we'll also now start moving towards a society where your race doesn't matter because A, you are South African, B, you paid attention in Sunday school, and C, even the law doesn't empower you based on what race or gender that you're in.
Fantastic. I agree. I agree with Duma and Kaketsu. I know I'm going to agree with Nzuzu, but Nzuzu, do you want to add anything?
No, no, I think I agree with all what the guys have said. I think that essentially for me it must be removed from the legislation entirely. Wherever privilege or special rights is given to one race or one gender or I don't know sexual orientation stuff like that, it must be removed. I think people are best placed to decide for themselves whether they want special privilege or not, but it must never be on piece of paper. It must never be given. It must never be given to someone who has not earned the privilege. And in a sense, I think that um, people must be people must be aware that you don't necessarily. Well, for me, from my perspective, I don't think that privilege is a bad thing, but I just think that when it's being done the way it's being done by the government of South Africa on a piece of paper, I think that it is and it essentially goes in the face of the constitution itself, the rule of law, natural justice itself, and it becomes an issue because South Africans themselves are not the one dictating who to give privilege to. The market is not dictating whom to give privilege to as a result of maybe their hard work, their skills, um, even their genetic traits. That's best to decide who to give privilege to rather than Matamela himself. I don't think in any way do they do it for purposes of trying to better the black man, but they're doing it for purposes of trying to better themselves and their pockets. And they just mirror the apartheid government, but worse in the sense that they can't even maintain the very infrastructure that was given to them by the government, by the government. Yet they say they love black people, but yeah, man, that's just really what I wanted to say. Everything else has been said by the gents, and yeah, man, it's a very when it comes to the social privilege, it's very difficult conversation to have, and it's one I don't want to have with the glass of Tanqueray in my hand. I just want to enjoy because nowadays I just have to always be smooching and socializing with people who continue to want to have those conversations. I think that let's have the real conversations, which is what we can do on paper and what we can do for our community.
No, that's well said, actually. Thanks, Nzuzu. All right, guys. Yeah, I think that covers it. Unless any of you guys want to add something or you feel that we didn't touch on something with this topic that you feel is important to mention.
I'm cool.
All right.
Yeah, yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
All right, cool. Well, gents, in that case, we'll call it. I want to thank you guys so much for having this discussion with me. Couldn't think of any better group of people to have this conversation with. I really enjoy your podcasts. So, ladies and gentlemen, speaking of which, please go check out ManPatria. The website is linked in the description below, as well as their YouTube channel. Go check it out. Give them a subscribe. They do great things and they have great conversations. I think you guys. Well, Dumo, you take the floor here and just tell people how often you do that podcast and where people can find you.
Yeah, we do the podcast every. Oh, sorry, I muted myself. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I wanted to switch the thing, but the arrows didn't pop up. But anyway, we have a podcast every Monday at 7:00. It's live, and you can also listen to it post stream as well. We also have it on audio versions as well. But so you can just check out our YouTube channel. But if you want to see everything, just go to manpatria.com, and that's just like the ManPatria universe. So head over there, you'll get swamped. We got like over, I think, 100 hours of content now. I think it is 100 hours. Could be wrong. I mean, if one episode is 1 hour, yes, over 100 hours. So yeah. So please, binge that, not Netflix. Thank you.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, do go check them out. I really enjoy their content. It's great stuff, and they have very interesting conversations as well. So please go check them out. Koketso and Nzuzu, give the audience, if there's anything else or any other platform you guys want to promote yourselves and just say, like, come follow me. I have linked everyone's Twitter feed or Twitter profile rather in the description. So Dumo, Koketso, and Nzuzu, you guys can go in the description and follow them on Twitter. But is there anywhere else people can find you, Koketso?
For now, we're keeping it real on that Twitter timeline until further notice. I'm still working on big things, so yeah, that'll come out soon. But when it's ready, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so yeah, I do take my time. But when the time comes, you will know about it. So yeah, check me out on Twitter. Drop me a DM anytime. I do respond to DMs, except for the forex traders and to the ladies who are trying to trap me into foreign trading. Also, I'm not single, so I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, that's a real problem. In Zuzu, where can people find you?
Yeah, man, you can find me on Twitter, as well as Instagram. I'm not necessarily active that much. But yeah, you can find me on those channels as well. And also, find me on my page as well every Monday. And yeah, man, I hope to see you guys on the comment section having fun and asking you various questions to us. And yeah, man, if you guys also want to catch me, I do work for a law firm in Pretoria. I've been putting partners. If you guys want the assistance, legal assistance, man, catch me on that flip. I will give you more information on my page. But if you want information, you can uh, email me on Zuzokati, Zuzo, KHATHI 27 at gmail.com. So yeah, man, if you want any assistance, please, man, hit me up. But nonetheless, man, I hope you guys have a great week. And thank you, Joe, for having me on the show.
It's been a pleasure, guys. Thanks once again for giving me an hour of your time and having this great conversation. Dumo, thank you so much for giving me 2 hours of your time and being a co-host, the first ever co-host on the Joe Emilio Show. It was great having you, my friend. It was a great conversation. I strongly encourage everybody to rewatch this from the beginning. This 1 hour segment will be released on its own in the coming week, and I'll send you guys the link if you guys want to share it and let people dive into this question: does black privilege exist? Spoiler alert, yes it does, apparently. Okay. All right, so boys, thanks again. You may take your leave as I sign off. Thanks once again for joining this evening. Peace, and I'll chat to you guys soon. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the ManPatria crew. They joined me this evening on quite an interesting conversation about does black privilege exist? And according to them, yes, it does. And very interesting takes and not debate, but conversations about it. And with the way they went about it, I think it does. And I think people need to talk about it a little bit more. And when it's being used in a way that probably isn't acceptable, I guess, to some people, if I can put it that way, call each other out. Don't cancel each other. I saw someone say, "Oh, but now we're going to cancel each other left, right, and center." No, just like that girl that from St. Mary's. Let's just call her out and say, "Hey, that's what she says. Basically racist, and you should probably not say that stuff." Maybe you need therapy. I don't know. But yeah, just call it out, ignore it. Wokeism is a problem, guys. We need to keep on fighting it as well. So, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Zach, Voot, Tracy, the list can go on. Matthew, Sideliner Opinions, Willem. We had a few other people. Thank you all so much for tuning in and watching and hanging out with Dumo and I. It was really fun having Dumo as a co-host. What a great guy. I'll definitely have him back again. Don't you guys worry. So I hope you guys enjoyed this panel evening. I hope you guys learned something. I hope it was an interesting conversation for you. And I hope you're a little bit more knowledgeable on how to fight this crazy world that we live in. I am going to have Gideon Yobert and Ian Cameron on the show next week, Tuesday, for panel night. We're going to be talking guns, ladies and gentlemen. We haven't really figured out what topic to talk about guns, but it will be about guns. And we'll be taking questions from you guys. Anybody who has questions about the gun law in South Africa, all that stuff, we'll be taking questions. So, yeah. Tune into that one next week, Tuesday. I'll be putting it up on the channel soon. I will be back Thursday evening, ladies and gentlemen. It'll be an hour with me, and then we're gonna have, I think it's Say What or it's Comedians Roast the Headlines. Either way, it's comedy night on a Thursday evening, ladies and gentlemen. So come hang out with me and some comedians as we try and make you laugh and end off the week on a high note. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for watching. It's been great. Great show tonight. I really enjoyed it, and thank you all once again for tuning in and sharing the evening with me. Thank you guys so much. It really means a lot to me. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, stay safe, be kind to one another, and I'll see you at the next one. Cheers.